I flew home for the holidays. When I got there, the driveway was empty, the porch light was off, and the curtains were closed, like no one had been inside for days. Inside the house, the lights were off too. Only Grandpa was there, sitting alone with a sandwich. On the fridge, there was a note that said, "Use your money for Disney. Watch him for the week." Grandpa whispered, "They'll regret this." I just smiled. 3 days later, they came to my door, worried and panicked. I flew home expecting noise, lights, and my big family having fun, but the house was cold and quiet, like it had been empty for a long time. The only light was the TV in the kitchen. That's where I found Grandpa. He was sitting at the table, eating a dry sandwich, with a cup of water. No holiday dinner, no decorations, no family, just him. I thought maybe everyone was late or had gone to the store, but then I saw the note. My heart sank. They had taken the money I sent for food and gifts and spent it on a trip to Disney. They left my 84-year-old grandpa alone, without even checking if I was coming. No one told me. They thought I would just arrive, see Grandpa, and take care of him like babysitting an old man they didn't even feed well. He didn't say much at first, just nodded when I asked if he was okay, and, leaning in quietly, he told me something I won't repeat just yet, but I knew right then things were about to flip. I didn't get mad at the way they expected. I made sure Grandpa had a hot meal, turned the heat back on, and set up his room with clean sheets and extra pillows. Over the next 3 days, I went through the house, checking bank statements, Wi-Fi history, and the cameras I quietly installed when I visited last spring. There was a lot they didn't know I planned for, a lot they didn't expect me to find. And, just as we were finishing lunch on the third day, there was pounding at the door and panicked voices. My brother, my sister-in-law, my cousin, all shouting over each other. They had no idea what they'd walked into. I let them knock for a minute, let them feel it, then I opened the door. They looked rough and burned, sweaty, bags under their eyes, and not a trace of that Disney magic they'd forsaken. My sister-in-law was the first to step forward, probably expecting a hug or some emotional outburst. She started talking fast, saying it wasn't what it looked like, that there was a miscommunication, that they didn't know I'd actually show up. I didn't say much, just moved aside so they could see him, Grandpa, clean and warm, eating a bowl of stew like a king. He didn't even look at them, just kept eating, eyes on the TV. The silence between them hit harder than anything I could have said. That's when my cousin started crying. She spun every excuse she could. Their flights were a nightmare. Their hotel room got canceled last minute. They used my money thinking it was a gift to help the kids. No one mentioned the note. No one asked if Grandpa was okay until 5 minutes in. My brother finally blurted it out. They needed help. Something went wrong with their bank accounts. Their cards weren't working. They were locked out of the travel app. They booked the trip using my money and some of their own. But now their rent was due. Their fridge was empty, and they needed a place to stay while they sorted it all out. I listened, let them spill every problem, every misunderstanding, every excuse. Then I told them the cameras had been running since March. Every visit they made, every time they'd left Grandpa with cold leftovers while ordering takeout in the car, every time they raided his medicine drawer looking for painkillers. I had it, video, audio, screenshots of their group chats they never knew were sent to the kitchen tablet. The panic hit full force then. They weren't just asking to crash, they were trying to avoid consequences. And I was right. The tension in the room thickened. My cousin had stopped crying. My sister-in-law paced like a trapped animal. My brother Saturday slumped on the edge of the recliner, sweat on his forehead, jaw locked. Meanwhile, Grandpa was calm, too calm, like someone who has already made their peace. After they finally stopped spinning their sob stories, Grandpa stood up without a word and motioned for me to follow him down the hall toward the basement door. The basement was cold, smelling of old wood and motor oil. Grandpa shuffled over to the far wall, reached behind a row of dusty toolboxes, and pulled out a dented green tin box. He set it on the workbench and nodded for me to open it. Inside were papers, down scenes of them, bank records, old checks, letters, and a typed timeline spanning nearly a decade. I didn't understand at first until I saw the pattern. Withdrawals, forgeries, loans taken out in Grandpa's name. They'd been bleeding him dry for years, using his social security number to open credit cards, getting payday loans on his behalf, and never paying them off. One document showed my brother had signed as a cosigner for a reverse mortgage that Grandpa never agreed to. The notary's signature was fake, done by a friend of my cousin's who worked at a upstore. The worst part, Grandpa knew he'd been tracking it all in silence. Waiting, he said they threatened to put him in a home, strip the house, sell everything, and cut him off from the grandkids if he spoke up. For a while, he believed them until I started sending money last year. He used it to pay for an attorney, not a flashy one, just someone smart and quiet who helped him gather everything legally. Every month, he built his case piece by piece, waiting for a moment like this. Back upstairs, they had no idea what I held. I took the tin box, set it on the coffee table, and opened it slowly. Their faces changed the second they saw what was inside. My brother went pale. My sister-in-law sat down wordlessly. My cousin mumbled something about not remembering any of it. Grandpa didn't look at them, looked at me, and nodded once. This wasn't about revenge. It was about making things right. They sat frowning while I flipped through the paperwork. I didn't raise my voice, didn't have to. Every page I laid down was another nail in the coffin. Their signatures, fake business receipts, credit card applications in Grandpa's name but with my brother's email. I already knew there wasn't a good explanation. I was waiting for silence and it came quickly. My sister-in-law stopped pacing. My cousin buried her head in her hands. My brother stared at the floor like it might open up and swallow him whole. Then I stood and handed Grandpa his phone. He called his attorney without hesitation, setting a meeting for the following day. He told them the box was out and the files were ready. That's when panic turned to begging. They swore they'd pay it back, swore it was never supposed to get this far, claimed it was just short-term help, a temporary fix while they got on their feet. But there was nothing short-term about draining an old man's savings and turning his identity into a personal ATM. They wanted to stay in the house just a few days, they said, until they figured out what to do. I told them that wouldn't be happening, not after what they'd done. They acted like I was being cruel, like they felt entitled. So I made it easy. I pulled out a manila envelope and handed it to my brother. Inside was a notice notarized, time-stamped, and legally sound. Grandpa had signed over temporary power of attorney to me 2 weeks earlier. Just in case this trip home didn't go as planned, the house was off limits, the accounts trouncing, and the car they'd been borrowing reported stolen that morning. The Wi-Fi they were leeching was disconnected. Even the storage unit they thought Grandpa had forgotten was locked with an inventory list already sent to his attorney. By the time they stepped outside, the locks were changed. My buddy had come by during the chaos and swapped every cylinder they didn't even notice. Then Grandpa did something I didn't expect. He followed them out and stood on the porch, arms crossed, watching them pack into the car they couldn't technically drive anymore. When my brother turned to speak, probably about guilt or family or second chances, Grandpa just raised a hand, didn't wave, just held it up like a stop sign. That was it. They drove off that night with nothing but a duffel bag and a shattered sense of control. I figured that would be the end, maybe a few angry texts, maybe empty threats. I underestimated how far desperation can push those who feel entitled. The next morning, the first message came through, a long paragraph from my cousin blaming me for tearing the family apart. She wrote, "Grandpa didn't need lawyers or locks. He needed forgiveness." I ignored it. Then my brother sent one to a picture of the house taken from the sidewalk. No caption. He was still nearby. We called the attorney and forwarded the messages. Grandpa wasn't riled, but I could tell he was on edge. He double-checked the doors that night and slept in the living room, with the remote in one hand, and his walking stick across his lap. Around 3:30 a.m., I woke to a tapping sound class, not shattering. I got up fast, checked the cameras, and saw one side feed was down. Someone had cut the cable. I crept to the back window and pulled the curtain just enough to see movement by the shed. I didn't call the police right away. I called my friend, the same one who changed the locks, a security tech with a private patrol license. He was there in 6 minutes. By the time his patrol lights hit the driveway, my brother was already climbing over the fence, caught, red-handed, hooded and gloves, carrying a crowbar in one hand and a gas gun in the other. He later said he just wanted to scare us, that he wasn't really going to burn anything, just make a statement. But that moment changed everything. It was a felony. The police arrived, took statements, and pulled footage from the neighbor's backup camera. He was arrested without a fight. My sister-in-law didn't bail him out. She called her mom and blamed everything on stress and manipulation. Grandpa sat at the kitchen table while it all went down. He didn't cry or gloat, just nodded slowly, like he'd been expecting this for years. I asked if it was okay. He said it finally was. The court process moved faster than any of us expected. Between the footage, financial documents, and the break-in. There wasn't much to argue. My brother's lawyer tried to paint him as desperate and overwhelmed by family pressure, but the judge didn't buy it. He was charged with attempted burglary, elder abuse, and identity theft. No slap on the wrist this time. My cousin and sister-in-law were called in for questioning next. It turned out Grandpa's attorney had been working with a state investigator quietly. As the case went public, more victims came forward, mostly elderly relatives of people in their circle. They had been running this play for years. When it all came crashing down, I asked Grandpa if he wanted to move and start fresh somewhere quieter. He shook his head. He built this house with his own hands and had no plans to die anywhere else. I respected that. A few weeks later, we Saturday on the porch together. The neighborhood was calm. No more strange cars parked up the street. No more anxiety at every knock on the door. Grandpa handed me a thick envelope. Inside were property transfer papers, the house, the land, everything. He had already filed them with the county. He said the house had almost been taken from him twice by the bank and once by his own blood. He wasn't going to let that happen again. I told him I didn't need it. I was just glad it was safe. He nodded, but I could tell he'd already made up his mind. That house should belong to someone who showed up. It's been months since then. My brother's trial made the news. My cousins avoided charges by cooperating, and my sister-in-law vanished to another state. None of them have reached out since. Good. Grandpa is doing better, now healthier, stronger, and actually smiling again. I take him to his doctor visits, and we go out for coffee 2 times a week. Sometimes he talks about what happened at Angry, but to remind me how some people act when they think no one is watching. This wasn't about revenge. It was about fairness. If you've read this far, you know why I share these stories. Not everyone gets the truth, proof, and a second chance, but we did. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. There are more stories like this, and you never know when a knock on the door will change your life.